All right. Here we are. Welcome, everybody, to On the Record, hosted by Shure. Welcome back. If it's your first time viewing, tell you what happens here. Dekel Bor, guitarist. He's performed with jazz legends Johnny Griffin, Reggie Workman, Pat Martino, and many more. And he's been hosting this show and talking to some of the top engineers and producers in the world. Today is absolutely no exception. This might just be the hardest working man in show business, as they say. Engineer, producer Glenn Schick. He's been involved with hundreds of gold and platinum records. He's worked with Chainz, Justin Bieber, Future, Jason Isbell, and many more. And he's played a big role in the Dirty South and trap movements in hip hop. I hope we get to some of that. Glenn is also very active with NARAS and the Grammys, so he's a player in the game. So I'll turn it over. We'll go to Berlin right now. Say hello to Mr. Dekel Bor. Dekel, how are you?
I'm happy to be here. I just landed in Tel Aviv for a 5-week tour of Israel, Greece, Spain. And I'm super happy to be here, super happy to be playing for people. So this thing I've been kind of been revolved around this album came out and it's been doing incredibly well, mostly thanks to you guys. It's called Little of Rule. It's out now on Ropeadope Records. And in gearing up for the next album, it was very clear that I'm not going to be able to record in New York. And as I was kind of upping my personal studio game, I figured this is the time to go jazz and go to my mentors or my heroes or my peers or my friends and ask them about getting the right sound on tape. So I just cannot think of a better person to speak to. Glenn has been a personal favorite of mine because there's a few records that we kind of play on vinyl at home all the time. Just an Isbell, Gallagher, Kurt Rosenwinkel, more than a few that they're just a regular part of the weekly thing. And you start hearing this name all over again, and then you start getting the sound. And Glenn really has a sound and a vision that transcends the genre in the most incredible way and also the most authentic way. So first of all, Glenn, how are you? It's so great to finally do this.
I am very good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Fantastic. So now that we're kind of coming out of COVID and back into the new normal, were there any albums that you listened to during this year as a fan that kind of gave you that feeling of solace or orientation or home-like feeling, or just thing that you love that you felt yourself coming back to that you can recommend for us?
So, you'll have to forgive me because much like very many, I think, music engineers, all that, when you're kind of on your off time, you're not a big music
Yeah.
listener. So I'm not going to say there was nothing that kind of touched me this year, but when you work on music, 10 hours, 6 days a week, when you get off, you want to listen to like a podcast or
Absolutely.
else.
Or hear nature for a minute.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I'll turn it off and I'll listen to the air conditioner. But
right.
anything's kind of better than kind of subjecting your ear back to analytical
So
listening.
this has a question in it.
Mhm.
After 10 hours of mastering, you find that your ear needs how many hours of before it kind of relaxes again and you're ready to hear something in a fresh manner?
So it's going to vary. It's going to depend on how much sleep I got the night before
Right, right.
and how difficult the job was for today. And, was it a, sonically,
Do you,
abrasive?
do you work super loud or super soft or somewhere in the middle?
It's somewhere in the middle, but it's comfortable usually. And I do turn things up for just kind of to more analyze like dynamics and things like that, because you get a little better idea when things are turned up. But it's usually at a listenable, comfortable level for most of the day. But some music can get a bit harsh on your ears after a while, and even if you're doing your best to smooth things out, sometimes you just can't avoid but getting tired ears.
Absolutely. Um, And I have another. So my first question is, at what point as an engineer, you've been mastering for 20 something years, 27, 25.
28, something like that.
Uh, at what point in your career did you kind of did you feel that you're going towards just focusing on mastering, not tracking, not that kind of thing?
So if we're talking about mixing and stuff, then we go back to like 1978 or 1979. So it's a lot longer than that if you exclude the mastering. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, I started as a musician just like yourself, and I was a guitar
You're,
player.
you're a guitarist, yeah.
Yeah, and a bad one, not like you, but you know, I was just
Can you say that again, just so I blush for a minute and I can savor the moment and Glenn Schick told me I'm cool.
yeah, I was you know, a rock guitar player from Queens, New York, and you know, I had bands growing up, and you know, we played like Judas Priest covers and you know,
Right.
AC/DC and stuff like that, Thin Lizzy, and so I found myself eventually in some original bands, and we go in the studio, and you know, eventually we had to do some kind of self-teaching to kind of get through the budget
Right. Right. Right.
recordings that we could afford at the time. So, you know, we kind of taught ourselves, and, you know, engineering was pretty much self-taught and really started full-time for me when I was working for one of the first rap labels in New York, a company called B-Boy Records in the South Bronx. And
Right.
we were going in the studio, and you know, one of the guys would say, hey, I got to go record this vocal track, can you run the board? And I'd be like, I don't know how to run the board. And so we figured it out, and eventually I learned how to engineer. So
And at what point did you tell yourself, did you feel that you have this huge passion for this and you're going to make this your main thing, your vocation, your life journey?
um, I think when I started mastering, I realized that it was kind of a niche industry and more of a specialized thing. And I didn't feel like I was competing with, you know, 10,000 guys. Maybe I was
Right.
competing with 5 guys now. And, you know, I wasn't the best when I started. And, you know, I didn't really have a mentor for, you know, learning. So I didn't really study under anyone. I just kind of trial and errored, made a whole bunch of mistakes, try to,
Right.
like, you know, get some inspiration from, you know,
Only way to learn.
yeah,
Really the only way to learn.
yeah.
So I'm getting a feeling from all the comments that we're be getting is that most of the people who are hanging out with us tonight are people who they have their own studios and they've been making music. And some of it is electronic, some of it is acoustic, some of it is electric. And for the younger generation, what is the difference between mixing and mastering?
Well, it's a very different discipline, I'd say. And you know, mixing is the kind of gathering of the parts and making a cohesive song out of all the parts. And it's really, you know, it's quite an art on its own. And certainly I know a ton of great mixers, and they're super talented guys. And there's a ton of really even good amateur guys now. But you know, certainly it's an art form, and you know, that's dealing with all the separate parts. And then when the mix is handed off to me, which is just 2 channels left and right, you know, I have to make some decisions.
Wait. It's not a Pro Tools session with
Ever, yeah,
seven. Really?
yeah.
Wow.
Just a stereo file.
I never
And
knew this.
although there are some mastering guys that do what they call stem mastering, I'm not a fan of stem mastering. I never have been. I think the mixer should be making mix decisions, and you know, that's not my role. So I'd much rather the mixer decide how loud his vocal's going to be, and if something's wrong, I'll tell him, hey, the vocal's not loud enough. Can you send me another one? Uh,
Right.
but yeah, I don't really. I'm not a proponent of stem mastering, and I don't think it sounds as good to me either. So yeah, we get stereo files, and then we polish it, just make it you know, smooth and listenable and balanced. and hopefully something that somebody wants to listen to. So.
And because from I think most people are learning nowadays, they go online and they're being taught that mastering is compress until it distorts and then send it away, which is I know from working with actual people that it's far from the case. So guide us through your process when you're getting those stereo files.
I don't know who's teaching those people, but that's kind of scary.
It's online. Everything is online.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of good information online too.
Of course, I'm joking.
I wish I had all the material that people have now that's at your disposal to learn all these skills. That's why we see all these like amazing guitarists and bassists that, you know, been playing for 3 years and sound like, you know, Stanley Clark after like 6 months of playing because they can learn everything online now. And I definitely encourage people to use, you know, YouTube and other stuff as a great resource. Yeah, I mean, for my part of the process, my biggest thing is to not damage the music. So people have spent hours and sometimes years getting their mix and their tracks together. And the biggest crime in my business is handing something back that sounds worse. So my biggest thing is to, you know, serve the music, to kind of make things the best they can be, even if that means doing nothing. So.
And is at that point, are we talking about EQ? Are we talking about reverb? Are we talking about compression? All the above? Sometimes none of the above?
Not all the above. You know, I'm also not a proponent of mastering guys adding reverb in mastering process, because again, it's a mix thing. It's, you know, how your track's going to sound, the ambience and all that. And again, to me, that's a mixer's decision. And I don't want to put that in my court. It's not really my thing to handle. So again, if something just doesn't sound right, I'll tell the mixer, or at least my opinion, and then they can decide what they want to do. But yeah, I mean, normally 99% of my work is EQ and sometimes compression, but I'm pretty gentle with compression. So.
And when you're working on projects, are you looking for like this goosebump moment where you listen to something and you say, this is exactly right, and I need to kind of stay in this groove or in this?
No. So what I look for is the best balance within whatever they hand me, because not everything is going to be your taste. Not everything is going to be your taste for, you know, balance or sound selection and things like that. So you have to kind of interpret what the mixer or artist gave you and say, okay, this is a noise track, it's noise rock. You know, I don't like the way it sounds, but maybe I'm going to give him the best balanced version of this noise rock track I can give. So it's not a goosebump moment, but it's just trying to do your best for the client.
So speaking about noise music,
rock.
being a guitarist, that's kind of my specialty. Just let me plug into as many things as I can. Mm-hmm. Do you have any special techniques or secrets or favorite kind of settings for mastering guitars, whether it's acoustic or electric, that you kind of feel that work for you?
Again, everyone's so individual. You can have 10 acoustic guitar records. They're all handled differently as far as EQ or anything else. You know, acoustic records, you're obviously miking the room when you're miking a guitar up. So, you know, every room sounds totally different and has different issues. So, and for electric guitars, you know, I know guys that, you know, plug in and just sound brilliant right off the bat, and other guys that plug in and, you know, they just need a ton of work on their sound, and, you know, sometimes over processed or, you know, different crimes that are committed during the recording process. So.
Right. And being a guitarist yourself, do you have any favorite things that you kind of like, favorite amps that you like to record with when you're doing music, or favorite vintage gear versus new gear, or like what's your take on that?
I like tube amps for guitars. I think, you know, you get like harmonic overtones and things that you don't get with plugins or solid state amps. So, you know, if you can get a nice tube amp and mic it up, great. Some of the plugins sound, you know, very good too. Um, you know, I'm not a fan of some of the modeling stuff, which sounds kind of artificial and a little thin to me. But yeah, the rest of it, I mean, there's plenty of good stuff to choose from now.
So since you're bringing up plugins, what's your ethos is more everything through old output gear, or you work within a digital ecosystem with like what's how do you and how did that evolve over your career, because technology has changed drastically?
Um, yeah, I've come full circle on that. When I originally started, I was 100% analog until they kind of went to the final stage. And you know, I used to cut records, so sometimes things would be, you know, what they call AAA. It's analog, analog, analog. And you know, we had tape machines and an Neumann lathe. So you know, I've been through all the analog phases of the biz. Um, about 10 years ago or so, I started transitioning, not my sex, but my equipment. And I started using plugs. I used them occasionally before, but I never really warmed to them and really loved them before. And I started working with a few different companies and finding there was some really pretty good quality stuff. And some things I found that you could only attain with plugins. So, you know,
Give me give me an example just for
I mean,
reference.
there's some things that have, you know, look ahead features that actually will predict what's going to happen in the audio ahead of time, uh,
Right.
which is not a new concept. You know, even in the old, when you cut a record, there were two channels that would go out of their tape deck, and one of them would be a preview channel that would actually tell the cutting computer that, you know, there's a big spike coming here. You need to attenuate something down. So, you know, that kind of technology has been out for a while, but it's much better implemented in plugins and digital stuff now. So,
Obviously, obviously. And do you feel that I know this is it's a never-ending kind of answer, but you feel that technology has kind of came. Does it really match the analog world now? I mean, when I listen to some of those, I've been looking to get some original pressings of specific 50s and 60s vinyl, and when it's done correctly, I mean, it's you feel like they're in the room. I mean, it's really uncanny.
I think, you know, certainly the technology is fantastic now. The difference now is that there's less skilled engineers and operators and less good rooms to record out of now. So
Absolutely.
whereas, you know, in the 60s and you listen to, you know, Blue Note records and, you know, all those kind of classic records that sound great, all those records really were done by the best professionals at the time. You know, you think of the Beatles and EMI and, you know, the lab coats, and you know, they took a lot of pride in their profession, and it was a science. And now it's more, you know, there's still people that approach it like that, but more hobby people and kind of casual knowledge people that don't have the full picture, they have a partial picture.
Right. Do most of the projects that you work on is it recorded in home studios, or it's mostly fully budgeted projects?
It's the whole gambit. I
The
mean,
whole
we get
thing.
everything from, you know, I've had clients that literally recorded stuff on their phone this year. And I've had clients that, you know, went the whole Megillah and spent a ton of money and, you know, got great engineers and properly did everything. So the whole deal. So
Are there any tips you can give younger musicians who are really working out of their bedroom as far as getting the best sound out of that situation? Because I think people are kind of obsessed with the whatever success and that Billie Eilish got out of working from her own bedroom. And I think people think that that's the way to do things now.
Well,
And
if you approach it like her brother Phineas did, he became a very skilled engineer and was very adept with sound and, had a natural proclivity to kind of do this. Some people aren't meant to engineer, and it's very apparent when you get their mixes. The You got to find your place and what you do well. And there's certainly plenty of people up and coming, new guys that do a great job. But not everybody's meant to be an engineer, and just because you bought Pro Tools doesn't make you an engineer. So,
and which recording tips can you give younger musicians who are working out of their own bedroom, hoping they can send you a project one day, and you know what it's like. Like you're working on this for like 9 months and waiting tables on the side, and you really think that this album is going to do it for you.
so
And
sorry, please, I think I interrupted you here.
and no, it's and then you kind of think you bring the project, and then you kind of very quickly all of the weak points of the project reveal themselves very quickly. And I think sometimes with experience and the right mentors and just the right advice, that could go a long way for many people.
I think, what I always tell, inexperienced or young engineers, keep things natural. A voice should sound like a voice, a guitar should sound like a guitar, drums should sound like drums. I mean, it sounds really obvious, but a new engineer tends to like go in there and tweak every knob and, put another plug-in on everything. And, that starts taking all the sounds, and, it sounded like a drum when you started, and
Right.
then by the time you're done, it doesn't sound like a drum anymore. And you end up thinking you did better, but that's because you're excited to do something new and put a new thing that you bought, a new toy. And less is more. Just get a good sound to start with and continue not screwing it up.
Right, right. Would you say that your thing and your sound that is a transparent one, that you try to take the project that is the most natural thing, or you have like a sound like a Glenn Schick thing that you kind of go through the same process with every project and kind of put your stamp on it?
No, I definitely don't put my stamp on every project. I think that's kind of egotistical, and something like, maybe I did when I was a very young engineer and didn't know better. But, when you get some maturity and learn that, it's not in the music's best interest sometimes to put your stamp on something. And, like I said, the biggest thing is to not ruin a client's music. And at least I want to hand back something that was just as good as what the client handed me, and at best scenario, something that's better. And it sounds like a simple thing, but it's actually not a simple thing at all. So
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And so you get this after it's already fully mixed, and people bring you in for the overall sound picture, and also for a fresh set of ears. I
mhm.
mean, there's another person there who you trust, whose taste you trust, and from having that perspective as the insider from the outside on so many amazing projects, are there any recurring themes that you kind of observed? Like, what do you think fosters greatness in an artist, that you kind of get a project and you're thinking, oh, this really moves somewhere?
I think, are you talking musically or sonically now?
I t- Both, really.
I mean, they're two different things because, I have to put on a different set of ears when I listen to music. That's an emotional thing for me, and not a discipline per se. So for me, the music is one thing, and you can have horribly recorded music or horribly played even sometimes, but if it's heartfelt and, really fantastic, like, you hear groups like the Velvet Underground, and it's noisy and it's horribly recorded, but it's beautiful, wonderful music. And you know, then you have the other end of the spectrum where you'll have something that's exquisitely recorded and has no soul.
Right.
Uh, so it's two very different things, and they almost have nothing to do with each other. So yeah,
And what about artistically for you, from your
artistically,
perspective?
I think the best thing for an artist is to, you know, when they kind of really get in touch with that thing, that special feel, that emotion, whatever you want to quantify it as, and just kind of forget what's going on, and it's become a performance instead of, you know, just kind of a rehearsal or
Yeah,
another
activity.
rendition of something. Uh, you know, that's when it's special. You know, I hear that on records every once in a while, and that always touches me.
Ah, that's beautiful. And I had another question for you. Me being essentially a hardcore jazz guitarist, there are always a few albums that I always kind of think that to me is the, you know what I mean, like the Bible of my aspirations, or the and do you have that as an as a mastering engineer, that like a few albums that you think are, this is like of a certain genre or time period in history, or that is the that's a unique achievement sonically?
There are, I mean, there's definitely some standout records over the last, you know, 40, 50 years. Of course, I don't think you could make music that long without coming at least into a few instances of, you know, something amazing. But, and there's engineers that I just kind of like, you know, all their work of, or that type of thing. Their body of work is just, you know,
Please
pretty
share,
solid.
please. That'll be fantastic to hear.
I mean, you know, there's guys like Chad Blake, very, you know, famous
Yeah,
mixer, and, you know, almost anything he touches, I kind of usually like.
right.
And, you know, there's guys in my business, you know, the Bob Ludwigs and, you know, Greg Calbys and Ted Jensen's, and,
Yeah,
uh, you know, they're brilliant at what they do, and, you know, have always been an inspiration to me too. So, you know, it, there's plenty of talented people, and I appreciate all of them. So
yeah, absolutely. You know, we were talking about really the greatest legends and peers of yours of our time, really.
sure.
Um, and um, what are your feelings about digital music as far as the streaming generation, that everything is millions of miles an hour, and we can just click something and it's something like something else, and they kind of and the financial value almost evaporated of it, and for people like us who just love the music so much.
So you say it's a million miles an hour. Can I throw you an interesting fact? So music now, pop
Please.
music from the 60s to now has slowed down its BPM. So all the pop hits from the 60s,
Wow.
much faster BPM than anything now. And they've slowed down drastically. And not only that for
Wow.
pop music, but the keys have gone from major to minor. So
Wow, and
just a
that's
uh,
amazing to hear.
yeah, I thought it
Amazing
was
to
really
hear.
neat. But now I forgot what you asked me originally. So
I remember being a teenager going to school. I went to music high school, and we would buy one or two CDs with whatever money we can kind of take from our parents, and we would just ride to school and just repeat those two CDs until we knew them by heart. And then we would swap with a friend. Let me give you my Coltrane. I'll take your Miles Davis, and you just listen to their album for a week because you're gonna have to bring it back. And I remember forming this relationship with the album, and I kind of feel that way again with vinyl. That I'm like, I get something and I spend time with it and I put it on and I sit on the side. It becomes this very intense, deep relationship with that body of work, that I obviously don't get when I'm streaming at all. It's not that I'm not streaming.
I understand totally. I have a great love for vinyl because I grew up in New York, and there was this great record store run by a guy who had a rock band in New York, very famous band called the Brats. And he ran this music store, and he was this cool rock star guy. And I was, 11 years old. I'd come in after school, and you get change of $1, and you'd set some quarters on the pinball machine. And if you got more than a certain high score, you win a free album. You could pick any album in the store.
Wow.
And so I won about 300 albums. I think that's probably the biggest reason I got into music.
That kind of tells it all, right?
Yeah.
Just
And,
that,
this guy curated my music selections.
exactly. I remember asking the owner for advice. What I like 1, 2, 3. Who should I be checking out?
Yep. Yeah, no, it was great because I would buy records sometimes just because I like the cover. But
Yeah.
other times I would go, hey, Keith, what's good? And he'd be like, hey, Glenn, I don't know if you ever heard this, but there's a really good record. These guys are from England and they really rock. And,
Right.
so, I'd find something new. So,
I remember in my town there wasn't even a music store. There was a camera equipment store, and they had this one table of CDs, and the guy there would sell the CDs. His name was Danny, and I would come once a week and try to buy a CD, and he was like 15 years older. I was 15. He was probably 30. And he knew music was his life. So I remember like he would give me Santana's Abraxas, and then he would give me Wish You Were Here. I mean, seminal albums I would never hear from my peer group about.
right.
And that is a very special thing for me that I don't see how students would get from a playlist on a Spotify playlist.
Although I have to give it to today's generation because they are aware of all the kind of important artists. They have an actually good knowledge of classic music and, both, rock, jazz, country. They know all the greats. So they're not ignorant in any way of what's going on.
I wasn't. That wasn't what I was aiming at as much as there was a naivete in the learning process that I feel that Wikipedia doesn't. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
remember connecting the dots that Tom Dowd recorded Ray Charles and Coltrane and then Clapton,
right.
and he produced. I mean, he became a producer for Clapton. I mean, all those little things. There was a naivete and a journey like process to learning about them that I
Yeah,
feel
I
that
agree.
that I still go to Wikipedia all the time to see who's the bass player on this and that album, but it just kind of changed a little.
Yeah, no, I love the exploration of stuff. And I think, you can do that a little bit on streaming. You can, access any kind of music, but you need curation. You need that somebody to kind of point you in the direction of, if you like this, you'll love this. And
Absolutely,
that's the
absolutely. So give me one that let's say that if I love Exile on Main Street, what should I check out based on just your random association?
I mean, now if you told me something like that, I would say, have you ever listened to, the Faces?
Right.
It's that, British, blues influence, kind of raw sounding rock. And, so the Faces would be the next thing that would come to mind for me. That's
That's
kind of
beautiful.
like, you know, in that vein of Rolling Stones that make great music also. So.
That absolutely. So I know it might be a stupid question because you really work with everyone. I mean, just this past year alone, I mean, from Jason Isbell, as you mentioned, to Phoebe Bridgers. I mean, just it's everyone who's kind of like just had a hot record. I see your name on it. Are there any artists that you always kind of wished that it will happen and either the timeline wasn't there or the time in history or
I mean,
what's on your wish
obviously
list?
my wish list was always all the classic, heavy rock guys that I grew up with. So, like I said, because I was a rock kid, I would have loved to have done, a Rush record or a Thin Lizzy record. If anybody wants to redo their old catalog, I'm so in.
Ah,
But you know, I got to work with a couple people that I admired from back in the day, and you know, that was always, you know, just like a super fun thing. I turned back into like a 12-year-old kid again as soon as, you know, I'm like, this guy's talking to me on the phone right now, and you know, I'm still amazed. So you know,
The truth is that from my little experiences working with my idols, the thing that I look back and cherish the most are the whatever level of friendship that was there. I mean, the talks on the train on the way to on tour. I mean, those are kind of the things that I kind of look back the most. It's funny. Maybe I'm being sentimental, but I almost always take that more, or kind of affected me more than almost like the time on stage or something.
sure. I mean, you know, especially if you have any kind of like personal connection with anything that doesn't leave you with a bad taste, because I know some people also unfortunately have that, you know, meeting their childhood hero and it's not such a great experience.
Of course, we all had the stories.
But I
I think
found most people in the business, especially if they've been in the business for 30, 40 years, are pretty good, you know, are nice people. It's hard to be in the business for 40 years and be an asshole. So
I
I don't know
totally
if
agree.
you said that.
We just started this weekly concert screen series with Shure and Jazz Times magazine. So every week we have a different guesting with the trio for a few tracks, and it's everyone in Europe. I mean, really amazing, amazing, amazing talents. But a few stood out to me, and just by how easy they were to work with, and how easygoing and fun they were to work with. And these are the more successful ones. I mean, the ones that you would think that might be blah blah blah, they were so, everything was like so just easy.
The best guys are always, you know, at their core still nice people for the most part. You know, I've never really been disappointed meeting most of the legendary people that I've kind of had the chance to have a little window of opportunity with. And so, yeah, it's usually not a disappointment, but, you know, occasionally you hit a clunker. So,
So, yeah, well, this is just part of life.
sure.
So before I let you go, I'm just going to talk about some Glenn Schick favorites of mine. Noel Gallagher is a high one, a super high one. The new Daniel Santiago, Chord Wizard Wingle Trio. You've done a few of them,
Yeah,
but
I've
the
done
new
a few.
one,
Great.
I have the new one on vinyl. It sounds amazing.
Oh, great.
Future. I mean, there's just so many people. Missy Elliott, that would, it's really unbelievable. And so for people that kind of are listening and kind of hope to work with you someday, how do they get in touch with you? I mean, if I want Glenn Schick to mix my next album, like how do I go about it?
Mix is not going to happen because I don't
No,
mix
no, no.
right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, master.
But I'll happily recommend some good mixers. No, I'm the easiest person to contact. You can get us on every social media platform, and you can send me a note. You can email my office through the website. You know, we're easily accessible. So
That's great to hear. So anyone who's out there, here's your chance. Get on the music. Man, I learned so much. It was such a pleasure. Finally, we're doing this. We're talking about this for 6 months. The stars were aligned. So yeah, I'll be in touch. And thanks so much for coming on the show and just sharing so much wisdom.
it was my
And
pleasure.
hope
Thank
to
you
see
for
you
having me on.
soon, Glenn.
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're looking forward to it. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Bye bye.